My name's Imogen, I'm 19 years old and I'm currently on a gap year. For today's video, we're going to rewind 2 years back to October half term when I was in year 12. I took part in a scheme which allows sixth form students to go over to Geneva for a week in order to go and visit different UN agencies in what is termed as a work experience programme. I found this work experience placement through a website called my-work-experience.com. There are 2 trips a year, one that happens at the end of August and one that happens in October half term. The trip is primarily aimed at sixth form students. However, when I went on my trip, we had a girl who was second year at uni who's also on it. So I kind of think if you're older or younger and you're interested, be sure to just send Bob, who is the guy who organises it, an email, because the worst that he can say is no. I guess the first thing to address is the fact that many people who have also applied for this scheme, and you can see this all over the internet, are concerned about the legitimacy of the programme. So you email Bob's personal Gmail account. Bob Wiley is the guy who organises it. You email his personal Gmail account to get your application form, and the website seems a little bit not very legit. So when we first arrived in Geneva, I would say about 90% of the people who were there were like, are we involved in some mass international scam? Are we going to be human trafficked? But the first thing to say is no, it is legit. It's just that that's how Bob organises it. The first step is to email Bob to ask for an application form. On the form, you'll have to fill out your personal details, your school grades, so that's like your GCSE grades, and if you want to put down your predicted A-level grades, you can. There are then 4 written sections to the application. So the first one of these is work experience. So you have to talk about any previous work experience placements that you might have had, what you gained from them. Sorry about the lighting changes. I'm just mercy of British weather, so it just keeps changing all the time. The second section you'll have to fill out is about extracurricular activities. The third section is about strengths and interests. And the fourth section is what you think you would gain from the placement, why you want to do it. And you just need to write a short paragraph for each of these. The key bit of advice that I would give you for the application process is to make sure that you tailor all of the things you're putting on your application form to the key things that people who work at the UN would want to see. So for example, it's all very well putting down, oh, I play volleyball twice a week, but you need to tailor that in a way that it shows some sort of skill or strength that you have. So for example, under the extracurricular activities section, you might put, I play volleyball twice a week, which is a key example of how I have shown dedication to something that I really enjoy. Another key fact about the programme is that unfortunately it is not free. The cost is £405. That includes all of your accommodation, all of your security clearance and stuff that you have to pay for the actual visits to the UN. However, it does not include your flight or your food, so you will need to pay for that. And I'm going to talk more about the cost of food in Geneva for anybody who is thinking of going. Hopefully this will give you a good guide of how much money to take. And also I will talk about when I reckon you should book your flights for. However, I think it is worth mentioning at this point, although you have to pay for this experience, there are definitely things that you can do that are just as useful in the UK. And I have lots and lots of tips on this. So if you would like to see a video on things that are kind of activism related or good kind of work experience opportunities, or good opportunities that can help boost your CV, help boost your personal statement in the UK, then do let me know by smashing a huge thumbs up on this video and leaving me a comment down below. So as I say, you'll have to book the flights yourself. The actual programme is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. So most people fly out on the Sunday. And my top tip for this would be, if you can, organise a flight for Sunday morning over to Geneva, because otherwise you're not going to get much of a chance to actually see the city. Because when you're going from UN building to UN building, you don't get to visit the tourist attractions. And so I would definitely recommend getting the earliest flight you can on the Sunday. There tend to be a lot of other people who arrive about 10, maybe 11 o'clock in the morning on the Sunday, so you'll be able to meet with other people from your team if you don't want to go and visit the city on your own. You then fly back on the Friday, and I guess you could also extend your trip at the end, but by this point most people are quite tired because the evenings are your free time, and so often you'll stay out reasonably late or you'll be up chatting quite late. So by Friday you're quite tired and it's just a case of let's just get home. So I would definitely recommend extending your trip at the start and not at the end if you can. So moving on to the experience itself, I've already said that you obviously arrive in Geneva on the Sunday, and the most important thing to know about when you arrive is the fact that nearly everything will be shut. All we managed to do on that first day was go to McDonald's, which is so expensive, and I'm going to talk about the price of food in a minute because that was a whole other ball game. And we went to an ice cream shop, and I think that was the only two things that were open on that Sunday. So if you're coming over on the Sunday, do bring a couple of snacks just in case you can't get food or it's really, really expensive. On the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, you have the main bulk of your visits to UN institutions, and you will have about 3 different institutions per day. And actually, you might have noticed that the silver book that normally sits underneath my mouse has disappeared, and that's because it has all my notes from this trip in. So I'm going to read through the list of institutions that we managed to visit, and it changes depending on who Bob is able to get in contact with and who he thinks will do a useful talk for the students. Oh, I feel very fancy now. Oh, I like this. So on the first day, we went to UNICEF on Monday morning. Then we went to the UN High Commission for Human Rights, and that was really good. We got a free poster, so that was nice. And the talk was really interesting. I knew quite a lot about refugees anyway, because it's one of the things that I'm really, really interested in, the plight of refugees. And so obviously the talk was meant for kind of beginner level, and so I didn't find that one necessarily as interesting as I thought I would, but that's just because I already knew some stuff about it. We then went to the Institute of Migration, and that was really interesting to be able to go straight from refugees to migration, to kind of see the differences between those two institutions. On Tuesday morning, we went to the World Trade Organization, and for somebody who doesn't know a lot about trade, that was really, really interesting, talking about what a trading system should be like, and how they ensure transparency and things like that between trade deals, and how to settle disputes. We then went to the Human Rights Council on Tuesday afternoon, followed by on Wednesday morning we went to UN AIDS. This was probably my favourite talk, because I just didn't know much about the topic of HIV or AIDS beforehand, and it really opened my eyes up to how much of a problem this is globally, and also how much it interlinks with all the different UN agencies. So UN AIDS actually coordinate their efforts with 11 different UN agencies, and they weren't necessarily the agencies that I first thought of as being directly impacted by HIV AIDS, and so that was really, really interesting, I thought. We then went to the International Labour Organization on Wednesday. This probably wasn't one of my favourite talks, just because it wasn't that interactive, but I'm going to talk about how all of the different presentations and talks were done in a minute, and how they varied from institution to institution. On Thursday, we did a different style of talk, so instead of travelling across Geneva to different areas, we were based in one UN building, and lots of different agencies came and talked to us throughout the day. So we had about half-an-hour slots with quite a few, and it was kind of a bit speed dating-esque in the way that it was done, and we also then visited different stations and we had to do different things. That one was really good. UN Environment, we then had the UN Family Planning Association. I really enjoyed that. As a geography student at the time, and politics student, I found that was really interesting. And it was really interactive, which was good. We then, who did we have after that? We had something called CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. So that was all about animals and the environment again, and yeah, that was really interesting. We then had a talk from UN Women, and I did really, really enjoy that one. Gender-based issues really interest me, so again, that was a really interesting talk, and I think that was the end. And then we had talks with UN interns, talking more about how practically you can get involved with the work of the UN. So that was what we did on each of the different days, and basically what each of these presentations involved. It was about an hour talk about the work of the UN institution, maybe an hour and a half in some cases, and then it was opened up for discussion and we could ask any questions. So definitely, if you are going over there and you know kind of what agencies you're going to see, because there are some that just stay the same each time, do write down questions in advance and make sure that you make the most of the opportunity by asking questions when you're there. In terms of the more practical arrangements, I knew a couple of people before I went, but that's just because I said, oh guys, I've seen this really cool opportunity, and I sent them over the link, and my friends actually decided to apply, and then we ended up on the same trip. So I did know a couple of people, but that being said, most people on the trip didn't know anybody, and it's just a really nice way to meet new friends. I'm still in touch with loads of my friends from the Geneva trip, and we meet up occasionally. So I would definitely recommend applying even if your friends aren't doing it, because it means that you'll get to meet a new group of friends. You're put in dorms which are just randomly allocated in Geneva Hostel. I think you have about 6 of you in each room, which means there are about 24 to 30 of us on the whole trip. The dorms were basic. Obviously it's not a 5-star hotel, you're staying in a hostel, but it was absolutely fine, and the facilities were fine as well. So, oh, the other thing to note is the hostel does have a kitchen, and that will be relevant when I talk about food and drink in a minute. Although I said food isn't included in your trip price, it does actually include a continental breakfast every morning at the hostel, and this is fine. It's just a standard continental breakfast. It's got toast, cereal, jam, I think it had some cheese, I could be wrong, but yeah, it's just a standard continental breakfast, so you can definitely fill up at breakfast if you don't want to necessarily spend loads during the day. In terms of food in Geneva, it is very, very expensive as a city. However, there are ways to keep costs down. To give you a ballpark figure of how expensive Geneva actually is, in McDonald's, a 20 chicken nugget meal is actually £13 over there. So obviously you can see it's a lot more expensive than what we're used to in the UK. However, costs can definitely be kept low by shopping at Lidl and just cooking in the hostel kitchen on an evening, making yourself a packed lunch for the day. But if you do want to buy food in the UN canteens, which is where everyone eats their lunch and things between different institutions, then you'll be looking at about £10 to £12 without a drink for a meal. So it's not too badly priced compared to the rest of Geneva, but there's definitely ways that you can make the trip cheaper if needs be. The drinking age for beer, wine and cider is 16 in Switzerland, which means obviously that everybody who's on the trip can drink. We just used to go to a pub on an evening. I can't actually remember what the name of the pub is. I know my Geneva friends are going to be like screaming at the screen now, like as if you can't remember the name of the pub, because we used to go there every single night, and we just used to chill out there on an evening, because after your talk's finished for the day, you're free to go. You can go and do whatever you want. And Bob's kind of one rule is that you need to be back in the hostel, I think it was by 11 o'clock in the evening, but he doesn't check this, so if you're out till like 11:15, it's fine. As well as the evenings for free time, you also get free time on Wednesday afternoon. You can go and visit CERN, you can go up a mountain / hill thing. I don't really know what it actually was, but I know Bob led a trip up there. You can go to the Swiss-French border and walk over there, which is cool. Or you could do what me and my friends decided to do, which was, even though it was absolutely freezing in Geneva in October, as in we've been wearing coats for the majority of the trip, we decided we were just going to go swimming in the lake. But it was so much fun, just to kind of mess around, have an afternoon off and chill out with really nice people who we just met. So that's all for the experience itself. In terms of whether I'd recommend it, I think there's a couple of things to say here. The first one of those being that even though this is called a work experience placement, there's not a lot of experience. It's a lot of sitting, listening to other people talk, and this is kind of understandable, because when you go into an organisation like the UN, it's hardly like they're going to let a group of 30 teenagers loose on like UN work, but equally it isn't necessarily what your conventional work experience would involve. It is a valuable thing to do, as you learn firsthand about the work of different institutions. You listen to what people are doing right then and there. They're able to tailor their talks for you, and you wouldn't necessarily get this opportunity anywhere else. However, I would say this isn't an absolutely essential trip, and if funds are tight, then I wouldn't necessarily say this is the best use of your money. There are definitely things that you can do that are just as useful here in the UK for absolutely nothing, and as I say, I'll make another video on this if that's something that you would be interested in. So that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and hit that subscribe button down below so that you are notified when I next post. My next video will be up on Monday, so I will see you then.